Welcome to Cooking with Teams. I'm your host, Matt Hickey. Today we'll be cooking up a tasty bot, FAQPlus version 2. Today we're reading from the cookbook of application templates for Microsoft Teams. App templates are production-ready, open source, and available for free on GitHub. Each contains detailed recipe to help you deploy. And the source code's available if you want to modify the recipe to meet your specific needs. Today's app template is the FAQPlus version 2 application template. This is a conversational Q&A bot that brings a human into the loop when it's unable to help. For more information on app templates, visit aka.ms/app templates. Here's the recipe we'll be diving into in a minute. We're going to need one Azure subscription, one Office 365 tenant, a copy of the FAQPlus version 2 deployment guide, and then at least one source for our knowledge base. On a high level, we're going to register some new applications in Azure Active Directory, both a bot app and a config app. We're going to deploy these resources to Azure by using an ARM template. We're going to set up authentication for the configuration app. We're going to create our knowledge base. We're going to configure the FAQPlus application. We're going to create our application packages in Teams. And then finally, we're going to run the app in Teams. Let's get started. We're in the landing page I shared earlier for application templates for Microsoft Teams. We're looking for the FAQPlus application template. Here it is, FAQPlus bot. Now it's important we want to grab version 2, which was released in 2020, so I'll click the link here under version 2, Get on GitHub. This is the landing page for the solution on GitHub. Let's click Wiki and then click Deployment Guide. Here are step-by-step instructions to get this sucker deployed. Let's start on step 1, registering 2 new Azure AD applications, one for the bot itself and one for the config app. So let's go into the Azure portal and click on App Registrations and click New Registration. Now what do we want to call this thing? Let's call it Teams Bot. It's going to answer questions related to O365 and Teams. Now we need to pick accounts in any organizational directory and click Register. Now throughout this process there will be some key values that we'll need to record and use later. And the first of those is the application or client ID. Let's copy this and paste it into Notepad. This is the bot client ID. The next one is the directory ID or tenant ID. Let's copy that as well. Save for later. Great. Now we need a secret for this application. So we'll click in the left here, Certificates and Secrets, and we'll click New Client Secret. And we don't want this client secret to expire, so we'll pick Never. And we'll also need to save this for later. So let's copy this to our Notepad. Great, we got the app registration done for the bot. Let's now create one for the config app. So back to App Registrations, New Registration, Teams Bot Config, accounts in any organizational directory, and click Register. Now the config app does not need a client secret, but we do want to record the client ID for the config app. So let's go ahead and copy this and paste that into our Notepad. So at this point we have 4 unique values. We have the bot client ID, we have the directory ID, we have the bot secret, and we have the configuration app ID. Awesome, so step 1's complete, and here we are back in the deployment guide. For the all-important step 2, we're going to deploy these resources to our Azure subscription. Now Teams Product Group made this easy, and there's an ARM template that's going to deploy these 11 resources. So I'll click the Deploy to Azure button. And there's some important decisions I need to make in filling out this template. The first is some basic information like which Azure subscription might I use. The next is a resource group. I'd recommend creating a new resource group to keep all these resources together. Call mine Teams Bot. The next is the base resource name. This is going to use the naming of the resources that are created in Azure. This is a common failure point. If you look in the wiki in the troubleshooting section, this issue's detail is issue number 2 that the app service name already exists. So when the ARM template tries to deploy this, it needs to deploy app service name base resource name.azurewebsites.net. Instead of just trying something, I'd recommend to see if it's available first. So I go into the Azure portal and I go to App Services and I click on Add. This is where we can quickly check if a web app name is already taken. So TeamsBot, as I'd imagine, is already taken and our deployment would have failed. I'm going to make this unique and call it HIC-TeamsBot, which I know is available. So we're not going to create anything here, but we're going to go back to our template and we're going to call it HIC-TeamsBot. This is not visible to the user, again, just the base resource name that we use in Azure. Next, we need some of those fields that we created in step 1. So we need the bot client ID. Let's go ahead and copy that. Paste it. We need the bot client secret. We need the config app client ID. And then we need to specify the config admin UPN list. This is a list of users, semicolon delimited, that have the ability to use the FAQPlus version 2 config app. I'll put myself in there, as well as best practices, and we want at least 2. I'll put Megan in there too. Now this app display name is what the users are going to see. This we'll call it TeamsBot. App description is also visible to users. Let's go with the default, a friendly bot that answers questions and connects us to experts. Let's also go with the default icon. We could change this later, we could specify a new one now. For the tenant ID, you can leave this default if the O365 tenant is the same as your Azure, if they share the Azure AD. In my case, it is. But just to be sure, I'm going to also paste the bot directory ID in here as well. Next are a number of choices around pricing and sizing of FAQPlus. Now this is the SKU of the app service, and I want this to just be a POC, so I'm going to go as low as possible. I'm going to pick the basic SKU. I'm going to pick plan size 1. I'm going to go down to the F0 SKU for Q&A Maker, which is free, as well as the F SKU for the search service, which is also free. Now if I did fork and I had a custom deployment, this is where I'd specify my Git repo. I'm going to keep that the default, and I'll just click agree to the terms and click purchase. Now you can watch your deployment as it happens, and I'd actually recommend this. If you click on the alarm icon here in the upper right, notice there's a deployment in progress. I'll click that and I'll be able to watch blow by blow as each resource is created. I'll come back to you in a few minutes as this is all set. Voila! Like any good cooking show, I had a turkey that was already cooked, ready to go in the oven. As you can see, our deployment was successful and took about 20 minutes. If you want to verify this, you can check out the resource group and make sure the Azure resources were created. In my case, there's a new resource group called TeamsBot, and here's the resources that the ARM template created. Awesome, so here we are back in the deployment guide, ready to tackle step 3, which is setting up authentication for the config app. The first value that we'll need is the location of the config app, and this is base resource name -config.azurewebsites.net. If you forgot what this was, you can check in the Azure portal. If we go into the newly created resource group, TeamsBot, and we look for the app service for the config, so in my case, HIC-TeamsBot-config. Up in the upper right-hand corner will be the URL that we need. Let's copy that. Next, we need to go back to the app registrations, and we'll find the config app registration that we created in step 1. In my case, TeamsBot config. Next, we need to click Authentication and enter a new web redirect URI for the config app. In my case, HIC-TeamsBot config/azurewebsites.net. We also want to click this ID tokens checkbox and click Save. So there's step 3 complete. Awesome, so here we are back in the deployment guide, ready to complete step 4 of cooking up this awesome bot, which is creating the Q&A Maker knowledge base. For this step, we're going to go to the website qnamaker.ai. We're going to sign in with the same account that we used to create the resources, and we're going to click Create a Knowledge Base. Now we need to skip step 1 because this was already completed by the ARM template deployment. The ARM template deployed a Q&A Maker service in Azure, so skip step 1. Step 2 will ask for a bunch of values like the directory or tenant, the Azure subscription, the Q&A service. It's important to pick the Q&A service that we just created as part of the ARMS template deployment, in my case, HIC TeamsBot. And then the language. Q&A Maker supports over 40 different languages. Next, we'll need to give our KB a name. I'll call mine TeamsBot KB. And then options of how we want to populate. We could point Q&A Maker to online articles. It'll create Q&A pairs from online facts. We can also upload files that have question and answer pairs, maybe Word documents or spreadsheets or PDFs. In my case, I'm going to skip this because I'm going to do a full import coming up. We can also supply Q&A pairs, which are called the chit-chat pairs. These answer thousands of small talk questions like, who's your daddy? And we have different personalities that we can impart on this Q&A chit-chat. I'll go with Carrie. Next step, we're going to create our KB. So it only took a minute or two to create the knowledge base, but notice my knowledge base is pretty sparse. I just have the 90 Q&A pairs that came from chit-chat Carrie. So in order to import a bunch of good Q&A pairs, I'm going to go to Settings. I'm going to scroll down a little to Import Knowledge Base. This is where I'm going to pick my spreadsheet with 145 quality Q&A pairs. This is available at https://AdoptBot. So at this point, I'm importing 145 quality Q&A pairs that we'll see in a second. There's some great Q&A pairs in here like why use teams, what's the difference between a team and a channel, a bunch of great quality pairs. Next, we're going to click Save and Train and then Publish. Now we publish, we want to get the KB ID. It's a GUID that we're going to need later. Here's the KB ID. I'm going to select this and paste it into our scratch pad. There we are, complete with creating our knowledge base. All right, here we are back in the deployment guide to tackle step 5, which is a really easy step. We're going to configure the configuration app. To do that, we need to go to the configuration app website. It's base resource name -config.azurewebsites.net. In my case, HIC TeamsBot-config.azurewebsites.net. You'll need to sign in with one of the 2 accounts that we specified in step 2 that are allowed to config the FAQPlus configuration app. In my case, matt@hicdemo.com. Now we need a team ID. This is where the escalations, when the bot can't answer and the user clicks Ask an Expert or Submit Feedback, this is the team in the general channel where these escalations are going to flow. The easiest way to do this is to create a team in Teams. In my case, I already have one called Office 365 Adoption Experts. Click on the ellipse and click Get Link to Team. Click Copy. We're going to paste this into the config app. We also need our knowledge base ID, and that was from the prior step that we stuck in our scratch pad. So here's the knowledge base that we created, and I'll paste that in here. As you can see, we can also change the welcome message and the help tab test message for the bot. I'm going to just click OK to save both these values, and we're good to go on this step. All right, I'm ready to tackle step 6, which is one of the trickier steps, which is creating the Teams app packages. It's tricky because we need to do some file manipulation, and the parsing of the JSON is very strict, so we need to get it right. So the first thing we want to do, if we haven't already, is go download the source code for FAQPlus version 2. So here we are at the GitHub landing page for FAQPlus version 2. I'll click clone or download, and then I'm going to download a zip. I've downloaded this zip to a folder on my hard drive, which I call TeamsBot. I'm going to go ahead and right click on this, and I'm going to extract all the files. So we'll create a directory with all the files exploded. Next, let's go into that directory structure, a few layers deep, and look for the manifest subdirectory. Now, to make it easy, I'm going to create 2 new subfolders, one called User and one called Expert. copied both icons into each folder. Copy, paste. And then I'm going to move the end user JSON. I'm going to copy this and paste that into the user folder. And the SME or the expert JSON, I'll copy that into the expert folder. All right, let's get started editing the two manifest.json files. Let's start with the user. So let's open manifest end user.json. Now the values that we need to change are denoted by double brackets. Let's start at the top with developer information. Now these websites don't actually need to exist, but they need to be in valid HTTPS format. Great, looks good. Next is the name of the bot. Again, I'm calling mine Teams bot. Description looks good to me. Next we'll need the bot ID from our Scratchpad. This is the bot ID for the client app. This help tab is optional. I'm going to skip it, but we do need to change valid domains here at the bottom. And this does not need to include HTTPS. It can't. All right, great. The end user JSON looks great. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to rename it as manifest.json. Great, now I'm going to add these three files to a zip folder. And call it user.zip. Great, now let's do the same thing to the experts app. So open manifest SME JSON and change developer information. In this case, this is the Teams bot experts team. Now we want the bot ID for the client app again. Let's go ahead and copy this from our Scratchpad. This is not the app ID for the config app. That's a common failure point. And again, we'll just need the valid domain. Bot ID again here at the bottom. And app domain without the HTTPS. Awesome. I'll rename this file as well to manifest.json. And zip all three into experts.zip. Awesome, there we go. We got our two packages that we'll upload to Teams in the next step. Step 7, the final step. We're going to run these apps in Microsoft Teams. Before you upload the packages that we just created, it's important to check your app permission policies in your Office 365 tenant. We do this by launching Teams Admin Center go into Teams Apps and Manage Apps. The first we want to check are the global org-wide app policies that take precedence over any granular permission policies. Click the org-wide app setup settings button in the top right. Now these are custom apps. We want to make sure that allow interaction with custom apps is on. Next we want to look at our granular permission policies, and you may only have one, which is a global org-wide default, which applies to everybody. As you can see, you can get granular here and assign different app permission policies to different constituencies inside your tenant. For me, most everybody gets this global policy, so let's open this up. And again, we want to make sure that tenant apps are allowed all apps, or at the very least, we need to allow the specific apps we're about to upload. So it looks like I'm good to go. I allow custom apps, tenant apps, should have no issues. So let's start by uploading the Teams packages. Now that we know our app permission policies look solid, let's upload the apps to Teams. Let's first start with the user app. There's a lot of choices for this, but the simplest way to do it, since this app will be available to anybody to ask questions, is upload it to the tenant store. So if we go into Teams and we click Apps in the lower left rail, we click Upload a Custom App, upload for your tenant name, upload for HIC demo in my case. Now we want the user.zip. Now there's a lot that can go wrong here. It may say something went wrong. You may get a more descriptive error that there's a specific problem with your JSON. Most likely if something goes wrong, it's related to your JSON. So double check and make sure that all the syntax is 100% correct. So there we go. We now have TeamsBot loaded for everybody in the tenant store. Next, we need to deal with the Experts app. Now the easiest way to do that, or the recommended way, is to sideload it to a private team that only the adoption experts have access to. So to do that, we click the ellipse on the team, we click Manage Team, and then we click Apps. And then we click Upload a Custom App. You need to be an owner of the team to see this Upload a Custom App. I've seen that a common failure. So again, in this case, we'd want the expert zip file. And what we've done is we sideloaded this to the team. So a lot can go wrong during that step, but if you get any errors like something went wrong or specific, it's related to the syntax of your JSON. One of the last things I want to show you is how you'd surface this app for all users in the tenant, or even specific users. We're back in Teams Admin Center, and instead of permission policies, this time we'll go to Setup Policies. Again, we can have different setup policies for different constituencies. For me, I want this app to be available for everybody, so I'm going to add it to the global org-wide policy. Now to add apps, it's really simple. We click Add Apps, and we look for our app, TeamsBot. And there it is. It'll be pinned on the left rail for all users. You notice that we can reorder this, either move these up or down. Simply click Save, and within 24 hours, this policy will take effect. Here we are back in Teams, our beautiful TeamsBot's fully cooked and ready for consumption. How can we ensure that we're running version 2 of FAQPlus? There's a couple of really cool things of FAQPlus. The first is the ability to support pictures and answers. So maybe you've switched to remote work and everybody needs a headset. So you can see it got a really cool answer with a picture. The other thing that's little known and I don't think officially supported is that answers also support animated GIFs. So here's an answer with a picture which happens to be animated. The other thing that's big about FAQPlus version 2 is the Experts messaging extension. If we go into this team and launch this, we can see the recent unassigned and assigned tickets directly from this messaging extension. But as well, we can also see the knowledge base. And probably one of the coolest things is we can now add additional questions right here from the Experts messaging extension. So super easy. I really hope this cooking show helped you understand FAQPlus and hopefully help you get it deployed in your own environment. Thanks so much for watching. Stay safe.